Alright, so today's little project is finding out whether or not I have an air throttle or what this thing on the governor is. I've been looking for an air throttle, and in going through the Detroit manuals, I discovered that this setup here, which this is the governor, and this is where the idle adjustment would be. This airline, which if you trace it back is the lever under the brake or the spike on the steering wheel column, and it feeds this and it pressurizes it. Now I'm hoping that what this is an air throttle that's malfunctioning, because when I pull that lever it just kills the engine, and I'm not sure why it would do that. Fingers crossed the seals are shot, and instead of pushing on the plunger, it's pulling it and just cutting the fuel off. The other shut off is up here, which is the cable shut off. So I do have two ways to turn it off, which makes me think that this is an air throttle that's just malfunctioning. So we'll open that up and take a look inside and see if that's actually what it is. I'm really hoping it is, because I really don't have a way to rev this thing up and leave it sit. There is this, which they all have, but on a Detroit it's kind of a bad system because of the way the fuel pump and, well, not really a fuel pump, but the way everything is set up. Basically, if you idle it up with that thing and you don't have it set just right, it'll slowly increase throttle until you're at max RPM. Basically when the air compressor shuts off, like if you idle up to start, once the air compressor shuts off, that takes enough load off of the engine that it just uses the excess fuel to go wide open. So there's really no kind of rev it up and walk away system for this truck. So we'll take that cover off and have a look. Also, my drip cans there hanging off of the airbox drain tubes. It's just a crown can with the top cut off, and then I have those wires going through the sides, and that hole is lower than the tube, so it'll never fill up past that hole. So once it starts leaking out of there, I'll know it's time to empty those. But they've hung on running down the road, so I know that they seem pretty good so far. It's not a permanent solution, but it's working for the time being. Alright, so I've pulled off most of the intake here, and what I'm dealing with is, so this I believe is an air throttle. There's oil leaking out from around the piston there, so I'm trying to get it out, but the way it works is the idle screw there, which is what my Allen key is in, because the way the system works, I don't believe that this idle screw goes all the way through the governor. It actually has a little bit of a stub that connects the actual idle screw to the one that's inside the air governor or the air throttle. So when I'm trying to turn the big lock nut, it actually just spins the idle screw, and it's not, that whole thing is just spinning in there and it's not actually coming out. I'm trying to get the lock nut off, but I don't want the idle screw to turn, so it's actually pretty hard to get in there. And once I get it apart, I'm going to see how it works and see if that piston was out of adjustment so that the air was getting to the wrong side of it. Whether it has to be driven in farther or set farther out. I'm not entirely sure which way this thing works, but we'll get it apart. Basically I have to get a 7/16 in here on enough of an angle that I can grab the lock nut and without touching the threads on that idle screw. Alright, I just realized I was completely wrong. My air governor's on and it works fine. The only thing is it's really not quite installed correctly. or like the book would say. In the book, it says that there's an air cylinder that's also on the same line as the air throttle. And as you engage the air throttle, it brings the truck to full RPM, and then the governor brings down max RPM to a preset level determined by a regulator that's supposed to be on the airline. I don't have that air cylinder or the regulator. What I do have is this lever here, which I've been using as a shutdown, but it's actually the air throttle. So how it works is, the farther down I pull this lever, it works the same as the spike. The more air pressure it puts on the governor, which lowers the high speed limit. I should have a regulator that would work a lot better. I tried this, and because you know how the spike creeps up after a while, the air pressure fights the lever. So obviously the higher the lever gets pushed back by the air pressure, the higher my RPM gets. It's about 100 RPM every 5 minutes, so it's not that bad. You couldn't leave it all night, but I never will anyway. So I'm at 90 pounds, so if I rev it up, I'll just say 1500, and I pull this lever down, it pulls the throttle down. So if I keep pushing my pedal down, and with the correct system, this would be a whole lot easier. So now my pedal's on the floor, and I'm only at 1200 RPM. Now typically you would just pull out this cable, which is a cable throttle. The problem is it wanders, like I explained before. So on this system, I'd have the cable yanked out instead of my pedal down, and I'd just sit like this. I'm sitting at 1100. I can bring it down. It gets pretty touchy here on the high end. So there's 1000, and I could just leave it like this, and it would sit and warm up. So it's not ideal. I'd rather have the factory system where you could just flip a switch and it would do all this automatically, and it would hold a preset RPM. But I don't have that. I could just put a regulator on this line, so I could just yank it down and at least make that part simpler, but I don't have the automatic full throttle, which is okay. So turns out you should read a lot more before you get to fiddling, and I had thought I had read it up and I understood the system, but taking it apart and looking at it, reading it twice, I found out I was wrong. So no harm done. I have to go in and reset my idle because the air system runs over the idle screw, and now it idles around 400 RPM, and I'd rather even have it rev around 600. So yeah. See, well, it's warmed up now, but when I first started it, it would sit around 300, which isn't cool. So anyway, that's it for the air throttle, I guess. Yeah, I'm glad I have one, don't have to install one or fix one. It's just, this is not the system that it looks like in the book. It's just how I figured out it should work, so.